Welcome back to the main stage at Event Tech Live, USA Canada 2021, and into our next session, which is something a little bit different, and all will be revealed very, very shortly. But first of all, let's welcome the people that are on screen with me at the moment. From Twig, Mr. Matt Coyne, and we welcome back Stephanie Selesnick. Hi to you both.
Good morning,
Hello.
afternoon, evening.
Absolutely. First things first, I've had my beady eye on the smart stage, Matt, and I understand that congratulations are in order because Twigged has been awarded the silver prize in our Event Tech Startup competition. Congratulations to you and all the team at Twigged.
Yay,
Amazing.
Matt.
Yeah, we're super happy, really happy.
For the sake of parity,
We
we
also
should
had
say
the
well done as
cutest
well to the other
co-presenter.
finalists. Canopy and
yeah.
VI events as well, but you know. Guys,
But Matt
as
had
I
the
said,
cutest co-presenter.
this is a bit of a different session here, and as I said, all will be revealed very, very shortly. Matt, do you want to explain a little bit and maybe take us into what we're going to see in the next sort of few minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got myself here in Brighton in England and Steph over in Vegas in the US. And this session was actually included Joanne Kelleway from Freeman's, based over in Sydney, but we couldn't make a time zone work between Sydney, Brighton, Vegas, and Central American time to come to you live. So we pre-recorded the session, but myself and Steph are going to be here throughout to answer any questions you might have, and then at the Q&A at the end. So we'll be on call as needed.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Matt. So as he said, put your questions in the Glitter Q&A chat because Matt and Stephanie are going to stick around. So at the end of the video, we can take any questions about the content that was pre-recorded. But right now, let's take a look at that very content and we'll see you back for questions with Matt and Stephanie after the video.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from Brighton in the UK, Las Vegas in America, and Sydney in Australia. I'm Matt Coyne, founder and connector of people, spaces and technology at Twigged and the Waves Connects podcast. And I am joined by fellow industry experts, Joanne Kelleway, the International Industry Ambassador at Freeman. Morning, Joanne. And Steph Selesnick, President at International Trade Information. Good evening, Steph. So it's been a while since we've kind of had these multiple time zones to get together. So it's nice to see you guys again.
Good to see you too.
Right. In this session, we're talking about registration and are we asking too many questions? So before we dive into that, I wonder if Joe, maybe starting with you, you have a little history with registration, maybe just so people sort of know that we know what we're talking about. Maybe you could just give a potted history of yourself with registration.
Yep, just a little bit of history. 30 years ago in 1990, I set up a company called InfoSalons, and we specialized in registration, data access control, lead generation, analytics, and data management for international organizers all the way through Australasia, Asia, China, and the Middle East. And in 2018, the company was acquired by Freeman, but it's lovely to be part of the Freeman family, and it continues to grow. We acquired a big registration company in America called CDS, and we're looking forward to seeing that grow. I would imagine that's plenty of experience in regard with registration. Do you think, Matt?
I think there's a fair bit that you've done there for the last few years. I mean, you know, a few years, yeah, definitely. I've dabbled in it myself. Maybe not quite as long, but for about 10 years, been doing sort of very similar things to Joe with the various opportunities that registration and digital bring. But maybe Steph, coming to you, your international trade information. I mean, I see you, I think, more outside of America than I do in America. So you obviously go to a lot of shows around the world. So maybe as you go to all of these different shows and you have, you know, from China, Australia and Europe, for example, what's a sort of common bugbear that you see, you know, as you're registering for these events?
I'm tired of providing the same information year after year, right? Why do you ask all these questions? Don't you know who I am, right? Don't you know who your client is? We know the technology is there. You're not using a typewriter anymore. Like when my mom started out doing, trade shows, we would type the badges. That was how it worked. And then watching it go through all of the different incarnations, I just don't understand why I have to fill out the same stuff every single time. Between that and the long queues, sometimes it just doesn't make sense to me. The face recognition was really fun when we got to use that at the UFI in Thailand. That was great. You walk up, there's your mug. Woo, I'm me. Yay, this is great. This was effort, and that was great. But yeah, I don't understand why most profiles aren't filled out and why so many stupid questions are asked. It just bothers me.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest bugbear by people around the world. It took us a while to convince all our organisers that they actually know all the visitors that are coming. So instead of just getting them to fill out a form again, they should at least invite them. Hi, Joanne. Good to see you again. Click here, review the data we already have on you, and then, yes, I'm coming to register. Would be such a nicer thing to do. But it did take a lot of people quite a while to even agree to that, because people, to do that, then it's much easier for the registration company to hold the data. And a lot of organisers were rightly so, a little bit skeptical about who holds their data, but once we got them to trust us, that became much better in getting over that hurdle. And of course now with social media, we can all register using our social media, which is nice and quick, as long as our social media is complete with all our business details, which sometimes it is not. So, but that does help.
Yeah. I love the people who on their LinkedIn profile have their first name and initial. Like, why?
Everyone needs to know your initials. It's important information.
No, but you look on people contact me. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't respond to people without a real name. I mean, I just don't understand where that comes from. I just don't. That's just a little pet peeve. But no, I think one of the biggest things is it's just a pain. It's a pain in the ass. Let's be honest. It's a pain in the ass, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. Go ahead, Matt.
It's one of those things that, Joe, you would talk about, like that kind of pre-populated campaign sort of emails, the email that comes out and confirm your information. There's an organizer, I can't really mention the name, but did quite a bit of research into that as well. And what they found, like, although they had huge open rates for those emails, if it wasn't the right time, the person to register for that event, they didn't do it just because, I don't know, whatever, they're jumping on a train or whatever it could be. But then they found that those people went back and registered from scratch just because they forgot or they couldn't find. So it's like, again, using the simple thing of email, why not recognize them when their email comes back in? There's some super simple things just to make that life so much easier. But so the next bit I wanted to kind of chat about, like we've seen the evolution of technology in the last kind of 16 months just absolutely skyrocket, and it's been phenomenal, like what that's going to add to the event matrix. But it kind of feels like Steph sort of mentioned it, fax forms and carrier pigeon and whatever else it might be, but registration forms haven't. I mean, some digital events are doing just give us your email and in you go. But it feels like broadly, sort of trade shows, conferences, etc., they haven't changed registration. They're still asking 23 plus questions, which is incredible.
Well, the reason they're asking it, though, is because they want to do a lot of they want to use it, right? So they want to use it to understand who's coming. They want to use it to make sure they're the right quality visitors. They want to be able to match them with people and so on. I understand why they're doing that. And they want to use the same questions that they've used over the last 10 years to see any changes, any trends or whatever. I get that. But what I feel is that when you have, well, what we've seen definitely is when you have too many questions, everyone just ticks the first box. So they're not actually answering it correctly. I think it works much better if you, yes, you do that. I can see that, Steph. If you just, you register people, and then once you've registered, in the confirmation email, it then states why you're doing it. Hey, we really want to match you with great exhibitors. We really want to match you with great sessions. If you let us know a little bit more about you, we can make sure we personalize the journey for you. Something like that. It can be done afterwards. It doesn't have to be exactly at the time. And giving them the reason why also helps, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you know, you may want to be matched, you may not want to be matched, and it's really up to the individual. You know, they may want to, they may not. They may have their own reasons for, I want to go explore and be more incognito. I think the other thing that hasn't done us any are lanyards. They came from concerts. They came from the concert world. The people working had a lanyard because their hands was free, and it was an easy thing to do. And then it moved over to exhibitions. Nobody wants to look at your belly button to figure out your name. Or across. If you're a woman, I don't need you looking at, my boobs to see what the heck. I mean, up on the shoulder or not at all. It just, And now in the U.S., we have a couple of shows, and when this airs, we will have had, World of Concrete will have just and be on its last day, and they're going completely badgeless.
Interesting.
So, maybe in the Q&A we can give a little update, Matt.
Yeah, definitely.
We've done quite a few bachelor shows, but the people that don't like it are the exhibitors, believe it or not, because they don't know who's walking onto their booth. So that's part, it is a bit of a difficulty until we have augmented reality signs on top of our heads. I don't know how we're going to change that.
One day.
Followed around with fire, VIP.
But so, I mean,
but think about it. What we've done is we've trained exhibitors, though, haven't we? We've trained exhibitors to depend on those things instead of doing other ways. So I think part of it is definitely re-education.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt, you were saying?
Yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, so one of the things, when we came up with Twigged, with the team I've been working on, and we were kind of looking at, okay, what's the rest of the world doing in registering for whatever it could be for their own corporate events or for their platforms and stuff like that. And I've written down a few of the bits that we found, but like booking a first class flight where you're typically spending thousands of dollars, you're typically asked about 13 questions. If you're signing up for a platform like Hubspot, so a very powerful marketing tool, it's often just 3. And the average trade show was 23. Now, it's kind of, platforms like HubSpot, they will then bombard you and with emails or other remarketing kind of tools to sort of start to data profile you and really understand who you are. And it might be asking a simple question of, do you prefer, I don't know, toast or bagels? And by answering that, they start to filter you down another path, So it's kind of like, it's quite incredible the volume that we're asking. And when you actually break it down, it's things like the, Mr., Mrs., or they, for example. And it's kind of like, okay, well, actually, do we need that question at all? Because that's one more thing that we need people to tick. So it's not even always the demographic questions. It's some of the, do you need to know what town they're in, or is the state good enough? All that kind of stuff. So it's kind of, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on like, what do we actually need in questions at registration? Maybe start with you, Jo.
I think at the beginning, we wanted the actual physical address because people were still doing direct mail pieces and so on. But the truth is we don't really need that anymore. And surely a postcode, can suffice rather than everything else. Probably we would still definitely like their email address. It would be great to still have their social media profile and also their mobile, if that's possible. If you have their social media profile, then most likely on that profile, you know exactly what their interests are. So it is weird that we continue to ask people what, for example, what industry is your company in? What, position are you in? When that could be already there on their social profile. also the journey through your website. We all have cookies, and you know, there a lot of people don't like it and switch it off, but there are still many people who have no idea what cookies are and just use them. And so you could follow that journey through the event website to understand what they're interested in as well. So there are a lot of ways to do that, rather than just asking the same old questions that people don't really answer truthfully anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's the data profiling bit that you just mentioned then as well. It's, you know, especially with the advancement, a lot of the platforms in the last year, if I have registered that I'm interested in water bottles, but I'm booking meetings with people that sell coffee cups, it's an analogy I've used a few times before, so apologies if you've heard it. But it's kind of, then you should know that actually send me speaker content about coffee cups, or send me exhibitors about coffee cups. Like, those platforms are smart enough to start sort of giving you that kind of information now. So you don't have to ask all of those questions at the first stage.
There is one other thing that works very well, we have found, and that's when you ask people, when you show, I call it the Amazon tool, and that's when you know, you say to them, oh, look, you probably are interested in this session, and they click on it, they want to book it, and then you say, other people that have booked that are also interested in this. So I call that the Amazon tool. And we find that actually works really well. People do like to know what other people are looking at, as you know, as well as that one particular session or that one particular exhibitor. So I think there's smarter, easier way to do things than what we're currently doing.
Well, I think part of the problem is that most organizers don't have vast resources of the multinationals. You know, many in the U.S., for example, the market's very fragmented. You know, it's not the market. You know, the majority of our market is one-off shows done by associations. Those are also the largest shows in the country overall. So what you know, a lot of them understand what to do with the data that's out there, or how to grab it. And I think maybe some of the registrars have just become complacent a little bit about that, in terms of repeating and not teaching them what to do with it and how to organize it. And they can't afford data scientists. They just can't. You know, they depend on their office to kind of understand a lot of the technology anyway. Their primary business is of being an industry associate, not of running a trade show. So we also run into that problem as well.
I mean, it's really interesting, because it's kind of, you know, platforms like Explory for surveying have kind of taken the guesswork out of creating surveys, right? But it's like, you know, Joe, with what you've done and what I've done for the last few years, there's such a wealth of experience in you and your team to sort of, I think when you go and talk, you'll probably have had the same conversations I've done when you kind of go in for these kind of big level meetings of like, you know, what can we do? How can we improve it? And you kind of make all these recommendations, but then it just falls back to, could you just do what we had last year? Because that would be so much easier. And it's kind of like, so it's, you know, I think maybe the survey, it's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, let's just do what we had last year is a terrible thing to hear from our client, but it's the thing that we hear the most often. And quite often we have, you know, I'll be dealing with the CEO of the company and they say, yes, we want that facial recognition stuff, or we want this, or we want that. And then they, you know, their reg page comes out looking exactly like what they had last time. And then the CEO will say to me, what'd you do that for? And then I check. And it's because the show manager just wants the same as last year. You know, don't change anything. Don't do anything different. Just keep it like that. So yeah. I don't know. It's very difficult to change it. Hopefully, you know, if there's some good to come out of COVID and the whole rebooting of our industry, hopefully one of the things that will reboot is the way we do registration as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Eddie Choi, who is out of Asia and Singapore, right? And he's spoken at a bunch of UFIs, and brilliant man. You know, he said, are we even asking the right questions? What are the questions that we most want to know? We don't ask those. We ask a bunch of other stupid ones that are relevant. You know, what are your buying plans? Really? Well, if if the product is there, if your offerings are good enough, if they're unique enough, if they're going to solve a major solution, they're gonna find the money. So they may say, oh, 6 months or 2 years out. Unless you're talking about millions of dollars of equipment, generally speaking, they're there to buy. They're there to see what's new. They're there to network. Those have not changed.
I
They
think the
just
reason
haven't through
that
the years.
Yeah, I think the reason that the questions become like that is because originally the information that organizers got from the questionnaires of registration, they use that to promote the following
Right.
show, really push the following show. And so they used it to show the exhibitors, this is the profile of the people coming. But now that's not necessarily exactly why we use it. Now we use it to analyze it, look at trends, and then match make and, personalize the visitor journey and so forth. So a lot of those questions now become obsolete, and we need to ask new questions. So I don't think that's fully gotten through everybody's head yet either.
Do you know, it's quite interesting because I think also, like, if they continue to ask those sort of standard questions, let's call it, but it's like if you suddenly have a huge amount of the audience saying that they're coming to learn, not to buy, it's like, that's fine, but then communicate to the exhibitors that actually we have a hungry audience for information. So instead of sell, sell, sell on your stand, maybe do, I don't know, a speaker session, or maybe, promoting some sort of topic from your booth. So it's kind of, I think it's okay that people aren't going to buy at a show, for example. So it's how you then use those questions in maybe a different way to, like you said, marketing purposes before, right?
Well, does the trade show have to be transactional, or can it be relationship based? Can it be that you're starting the relationship, you're furthering the relationship, instead of buy now, sign the contract? It can be both.
Yeah.
It can be both. But it is up to the organizer to say, listen, we think that we can work with all of you as exhibitors to really help educate the audience and how to solve these problems and what the new technology is and what the impact is on their businesses. And by doing the thought leadership within their stands even, and their speaking opportunities on stage and all the other things, instead of just to outright buy our product, by teaching them how to do it a little differently, I think we're going to have way better as well. Because I've seen a couple of shows here in the US took that opportunity during the Great Recession and re-educated their exhibitors on what the visitors were looking for. And as a result, they were able to survive and then grow their shows until COVID. So it'll be interesting to see what happens coming out of it. It is the big elephant in the room. The great reset, I think, is what Paul Woodward called it. Yeah. The great reset as we reopen. It's a good opportunity to take advantage and change.
Yeah, actually, and I think the great thing is that a lot of people's jobs might be different. So this might be a perfect time to now, hey, is this still you? And look at what they're doing and where they've gone, and they may not be with the same company. They may have left the industry. Who knows? But this is and as Steph said, quoting Paul Woodward, it's a great opportunity to do the great reset. I love that.
And it is. It's check on your data and stuff, isn't it? It's kind of, that's actually, so when we were talking about the whole kind of, this is a few months ago, I think, when we were all speaking about it, and it's like, I was registering for an event that I'd been to for 15 years, and it was coming back as live at the time, which it obviously has been delayed again, sadly. But it was the exact, I changed jobs and multiple hats in the last year. So it's kind of, my information's all over the place. But it was literally being asked the exact same stuff again. And it's like, there's no way identifying that maybe I'm working with organizers and suppliers now and doing something on your end. Like there was no, I guess, thought process to those kind of questions that come together. So maybe, like you talk about careers and is the job right? But maybe it's actually, we've talked about this for years. And I'm pretty sure we've been on a panel talking about this before. Maybe we need data people. We need people who understand data in the business to ask the right questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think it starts with redesigning your show. It's like the most important thing that you need to need. What are the 3 most important things you need from the people to register?
Mm-hmm.
What are they?
Yeah.
And of course, yes, there's been a tremendous amount of change in every industry across the world over the last 15, 16 months.
I know that,
and maybe, go ahead.
Yeah. 6 years ago, we started our data science division. And we put data scientists on because, as Steph said, not everybody's a huge global organizer and can afford it. And so we built a department of data scientists to help explain the data that we're providing back and the analytics back to the show manager. Because at the end of the day, part of the issue is that show managers aren't data scientists anyway. And so if you say to somebody, well, what do you want to know? Quite often they go, I don't know what I want to know. Because how often do people really know what they want to know? So to have a data scientist who can sit down there and say, okay, what do you need from this data? What would you like to be able to do? Do you want to use this data to speak to exhibitors, use this data to market, and sitting down and discussing it with them and showing them, I think that's made a huge difference.
Yeah. It's raising the awareness and opportunity, I guess, then with the data when you're sort of bringing that to the table of this is also what we can do and this is how we can help. So it's back to the explorer type model of taking the guesswork out for them, isn't it?
Yeah,
it really
so
is.
Maybe
what kind of personas do we have, and how do we define what those personas are? How deep do you want to go in terms of the data for it? Do you need to go granular, or can you just go with the top 5 different kinds of personas?
So I want to tell you a quick story that I just remembered. So in the year 2000, we were involved with many organizers throughout Greater Asia and China. And so we said to them, I've got a great idea. Let's just create a card called the Expo card that has everybody's detail on it. The visitor owns their own data. The visitor has their own card, and they just use that Expo card, and they scan the card, and then all they've got to do is answer a few questions, and in they go, and the information will drop into your database. And so back then, all the organizers went, no, terrible idea. And I said, but think of your visitors. And they went, no, the data is ours, not theirs.
No one else.
And I go, but it, yeah. And I said,
data.
It is the visitors' data. No, it's not. So then we tried that route again about 5 years later, and we went to big organizers like Reed. Hey, let's make a Reed registration card, a Reed Expo card. Use it at any Reed event. And that was even knocked back because there are divisions within major organizers that go, no, I don't want this division to get my data, on the, and I go, but it's not, it's there, it's on a card. It's just like scanning their business card. But so this is the mentality that we've been trying to get through and trying to change. And that is a really big question. Who owns the data anyway? I'm actually speaking about that at another session. But I think it's a very interesting situation of data control.
Well, it's really. I'm just about to. Well, it will be released by the time Event Tech Live's come about. But I'm just putting a short sort of blog together. But do you know the platform Brave or Generate, for example? Are you familiar with them?
Yeah. Yes.
So they serve as sort of almost ad blocking and all that kind of stuff. But they also actually reward people for. They reward advertisers for serving relevant information to the individual, but the individual can also then reward those companies. And it's like ultimately that comes down to that individual's control of the data. Like it's that person's data, it's no one else's. So it's kind of making that easier. Like, you know, maybe if they are building their own profile and creating what they want the work world to see from them and sharing it, like you said, with those expo cards, like that's, you know, it's only going to become more that way as people become more aware and more conscious of what data they are sharing and where is it gone or where is it going.
Of course, and
Well,
especially with
you
blockchain as
Yeah,
well,
100%.
with blockchain coming and becoming more and more utilized in different platforms, then, you know, the question of who owns their data will become bigger and bigger.
Oh, for
Well,
sure.
here's a question for both of you, though. I have a question for you. What can organize? We've got some organizers listening to us right now. They're saying, "Yeah, this is all well and good. Well, what can we do? You know, what that's fine. You're complaining. What are some things that we can tangibly do to improve the process?"
I think, you know,
Matt, why don't you go first?
Yeah, sure. It's, I think from my side, it's simplifying things massively. It's making it easier. I mean, it's what we came up with at Twigged, but it was to try and make that log back in process super simple. So if, you know, you do have cookies enabled and stuff, it remembers you've come back and you can go in. But then it's also like it's simplifying those questions too. So it's kind of, okay, what are the 3 questions that we need to ask to deliver a better experience for you? So it's like, what's your number 1 reason for attending? Well, it's content, or it's to see exhibitors, or it's to network. You know, is there a purchasing authority? You know, whether that's the right question or not is still being researched. But it's kind of like, if you have purchasing power on one show, you might have none on the next, because this one's about metals and that one's about plastic. So you're kind of, so it's understanding that. But I think also the option for the 3rd question of what's your main area of interest? You know, what are you wanting to come here to see? So it's kind of, if it is metals, then you launch straight into that platform. You can see all the metals, speakers, suppliers, whatever. But it's like I said earlier, if you then go through and do some, you know, networking or meeting set up with people that are doing plastics, well, then we as an organizer should be using that information to go, Matt's actually really interested in subject B. So for me, it's trying to, like, how can we get down to as few questions as possible to save people a lot of time and get them straight into networking, where these platforms are starting to do the profiling for you. So if an organizer doesn't know anything about profiling and stuff, that's okay. That's where a lot of the platforms can help support, I think. And just so you know, I think, guys, we're kind of pushing up to about 4 minutes to go. So Joe, what's your top tip? Passing on Steph's question, what's your top tip?
My top tip is, very simply, use their social media, their business social media, to log in. And that way you're already going to get a lot of information about them. Definitely do that. Think about the 3 questions, like you said, but also think about, once they've registered, just get them to register. And then in the confirmation email, ask the questions and tell them why you're asking it. So say, you know, we answer this question if you're interested in networking. Answer this question if you're interested in sessions. I think that's a better way to do it, rather than putting it all, you know, prior to the click, because sometimes you lose them along the way. We definitely lose people along the way. So get them to register really quickly, and then ask the questions within the confirmation email.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, with that, Joe, that you can also, there's so many clever tools that you can do from retargeting. So it's kind of, you know, you've put a pix on your page, like, you know what they're interested in. You can push back through those adverts that exactly the same like you said on email. It's just a simple question. And if you answer it this way, we're going to deliver you something even better that way. You know, it's, I think there's a lot of opportunity. But what about you then, Steph? Question back on you. What could make I think asking fewer questions better for you?
From the organizer perspective, what are we going to do with this? You know, if we ask this question, is it going to get used? What are we going to do with it? If we're not going to use it for anything, don't ask it. You know, marketing needs to change, you know. I mean, it sounds really basic, but if you look at everything, if you're not going to use the stupid question, then don't ask it. You know, ask meaningful questions, and And really don't give 100 tick boxes. Put things into bigger baskets. It'll find, you know, if you're using the cookies, if you're directing people, it's going to start, the machine learning will get there. It will get there. You know, a lot of people don't have patience for it right now because it's still in its infancy, because we're finally collecting the right information to do that. But, you know, remember when I was on Netflix and Amazon, we were getting offers like, oh, I'm looking at a rug. Why are you trying to sell me perfume? Like,
Yeah.
how is
I
that?
still
How is
get
that even
targeted
working?
washing machines, though. I mean, it's not perfect.
Well,
It's
you've
not
got 3
perfect,
kids,
no.
so that makes sense a lot.
But I think,
Oh man, this guy buys
Steph,
a lot of sports equipment. He's going to need a washer. But yeah.
yeah. Maybe it's just super smart. But I think, like, you know, what you just said then of like what you're asking for, and it's you also mentioned personas, so maybe it's really digging deep into those personas. Like, it's something that marketing loves to talk about, and it's not just a hype thing. It's kind of, actually, it starts to categorize those people, like you said, so that you can ask better questions to those people, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, guys, I think we're up on time. So I know this is pre-recorded, so that myself and Steph will be here to answer Q&A. So I just want to say, Joanne Kelleway from Freeman, thank you very much for your time. And Steph Selesnick, International Trade Information, thank you very much for your time this morning, this evening, and this afternoon.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank
See you
you.
later, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Matt, Stephanie, well, congratulations on that video. Fantastically put together. A shame that we can't have Joanne with us at the moment, but as you pointed out before, we saw that the issues of being spread globally at the moment sometimes just don't allow us to do everything at the one time. But thanks for that, Matt. I'm going to come to you first. There's been loads of chatter. I don't know if you've been monitoring the GRIP chat during that session. I'm going to throw it straight back to you to say, is there anything that you want to pick up on there? I've been facilitating one of the other stages, but I've noticed that there's a load of comments that have gone into there. I'll let you pick up on some of those if I may.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, James. And I promise I've washed this T-shirt since I wore it on the pre-recording. So the first one to come up: who owns crafting the reg process? And questions: event organizer, marketing team, sales. I mean, Steph, I'm not sure what you think of this. Obviously, if you're the size of organization that has a data expert and owner, they should own it and understand what all of those areas are trying to achieve with data, so that then that sort of team can build it together. Quite often that would fall on marketing if you don't have a sort of data division or something. But I think it's important to not say that, you know, maybe there is one owner, but they're getting feedback from all of the stakeholders, all of the different departments.
I think that marketing, yeah. So marketing, to me, you know, marketing is usually the one driving that, and they sometimes ask really bad questions, and the questions that the salespeople need are really, you know, for selling the next show, which is part of the reason that you're doing it. Part of it is for the experience, right, of the attendee and for the exhibitors, and the other part is to market the next year. So you're collecting all the data for the following year. So I think that marketing and sales need to work together far better than they have been in the past, especially in a lot of organizations. It's like they're this, and they need to be like this. And that's up to the folks at the top to make sure that it's doing it. I 100% agree with you. There needs to be one person coordinating all of it so that it makes sense. And it got to what are the important things to ask right now to get people registered.
No, absolutely. I mean, so, okay, the next question, because I know there's quite a few, so James, just tell me if we run on time. But
you keep crashing through them, Matt, and I'll come in when needed.
Yeah. Good man. So often attendees are asked for their buying responsibilities and budget, so this data can be used to market to exhibitors. Is there an alternative to this question? So, I mean, yeah, you can perhaps simplify the question. I think the importance of having that buying intent or the reason that someone wants to attend is important to know if they are a buyer or they're just coming to look at content. But I think maybe expanding the question a little bit, if you map out the entirety of the journey, not just from registration, but from maybe from your website into registration, into the platform, into what they're doing at the event, and identify every single possible data touch point you can have with an individual, you can create a much more powerful suite of information and insight to be able to go back to an exhibitor to say, this is what this type of audience did, and exhibitors like you that they interacted with, and so on. So I think it's beyond just that buying power question. I think it's important, but I think you can do so much more.
And also take a look at what are they picking for education. You know, if they're picking stuff, if you don't have huge resources, what are those attendees buying? If they're not doing paid education, obviously they've got an interest. So they're probably also interested in the products that are associated with that particular content that you're offering. It's another way to suggest things. A little bit more time consuming. To automate it would be fabulous. That's another way to look at it too.
Yeah, definitely. So the other question, and we mentioned in the video about World of Concrete, so I wanted to touch on that really quickly. Steph, I know you've been there this week. I've been following you on social with it, but how has it been for them going badgeless? Everyone's worried about, you know, QR codes on the back of your head, or what are they doing now?
I mean, we all have QR codes for LinkedIn. You know, on our LinkedIn app, we can connect with people right there. We can get all their data. We can get the most of their data that we need. You know, just figure out a way to code it. Everybody that came in today that's a new contact, okay, they need to go somewhere else. But, and then again, getting your stuff out of LinkedIn is a whole other area. Not really sure. I think it'll be interesting to see what the words come back with. Some of the exhibitors had pushback. People were engaging on the show floor. So because it's been so long, people are so excited to see each other. You know, networking has been number one. Hey, how are you? What have you been doing during the lockdown? How's your business been? And with concrete, because it's construction and they are doing pretty well, it's a more positive, upbeat thing. I know that TICE, which is the International Surfaces event, is next week, and it's also going to form a show. They're also going badgeless. So there's been a lot of talk on certain ends. I know Jo has been a big proponent of it herself to go badgeless. We really need it. And if you're not looking right here to see it, what are you gonna have on the badge? You know, a first name and a company and a city or a country. I mean, you know, with the print this big, it's useless anyway. That's my opinion.
Guys, do you mind if I chip in?
We can retrain him.
Do you mind if I chip in with something here, just relevant to the buying responsibility question? Because I scribbled down a couple of quick points here that I'd like to throw in there. The first one is we've been discussing on several sessions this week about events as marketing tools, and I think, you know, that old sort of ruthless operator on the booth or on the exhibition stand who would grab people and they just want to talk to people who've got buying responsibility. I think that exhibitors themselves need to really be adjusting this and using the live events as marketing exercises, as brand exercises. And if you're doing that, it shouldn't really matter whether the people that you're talking to or engaging with have got buying responsibility, because what you are doing is spreading the message and the ethos behind your brand and what you do, which is ultimately going to have a positive effect anyway. The second point, and the more obvious one, is that just by asking people if they've got buying responsibility doesn't mean they're going to give you the right answer. I know loads of people who've got buying responsibility who don't say that they have the buying responsibility because they don't want to be bombarded with all of that stuff from the show as a result of it. So the question to me is, from my own opinion, almost irrelevant now, because if you do have it, you won't say you have it, and exhibitors themselves need to be thinking a little bit differently anyway.
Yeah,
let's go back to exhibitor education. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
That's right. So I completely agree. I was going to say the same as Steph. It's like what people are trying to achieve with that event and how they interact with people is changing, because it's become year round. It's not just at those 2 days of an event anymore. And it's the same, you know, yesterday at ETL, I was talking to, I would say, a fairly junior person at quite a big company. But for me, that was still getting an advocate in that company who has since gone on to tell their bosses about what we do. So, you know, what a result. If you saw on a badge that he wasn't a senior buyer, would I have ignored him personally? Probably not.
Yeah, and again,
Matt,
it's teaching our exhibitors. Explori and UFI just released another study on this, and whether it's digital or it's live, they still cite exhibitor education and one-on-one education as the best way to give them a better experience.
Matt, I'm going to let you finish with this one last question because we're just about out of time here. But there's one that's just popped in saying, do organisers still believe that attendees are still inputting the right answer on question 25?
I would question anyone with 25 questions if they should be asking 25 questions. I'd like to see it reduced to far fewer, so that you're getting more accurate data that that we do on Twig, for example. So we're hoping for 3 questions, because we hope to get more accurate answers with that. If people are asking 25 questions, I'm not sure they understand well, anything, marketing data and so on.
Guys, we're out of time. I'm going to have to wrap things up there, but it's been great. We've been joined by Matt Coyne, Stephanie Selesnick, and of course, Joanne Kelleway on the pre-record today, and then the Q&A afterwards. Guys, thanks for putting the effort into making that session happen. I know that the timelines made it difficult, but it was great to have that pre-record and then the live Q&A here on the main stage today at Event Tech Live, USA and Canada 21. We hope to see you both again soon.
Awesome. Thank you very much.